Hello, I'm Nicole Gauthier, Department of Plant Pathology, University of Kentucky. I'm an extension specialist for vegetables, fruit, and specialty crops here at the University of Kentucky. And today's topic, we're going to discuss southern blight. So we're going to take a deep dive today into southern blight, and probably more than you thought you needed to know, but absolutely right on target. Growers need to know a lot about a very common disease in Kentucky and southward. So southern blight. The name southern tells you right there that this is a warm weather disease. As a matter of fact, I like to call it a hot weather disease. And blight means rapid death. So when things get warm and wet, tomatoes die or any crop will die really quickly. And there you have it. That's what's in the name, southern blight. So now you'll remember. So southern blight is caused by a fungal pathogen that is soil-borne, meaning this fungus lives its life in the soil. And usually it doesn't reach much beyond that. This image of a pumpkin, so that was the bottom side of the pumpkin that was touching the ground. So pretty much any plant part that touches the soil will be in contact with the soil-borne pathogen if indeed it's there. So in some old literature, you may see this pathogen called sclerotia, Sclerotium rolfsii or Athelia rolfsii. The current name is Agroathelia rolfsii, but generally we talk about the disease, that's the symptoms. We just call it southern blight. So southern blight today it is. The southern blight pathogen, Agroathelia rolfsii, has a very broad host range. Pretty much, it will infect dicots, those are your broadleaf plants, and not monocots, so not the grassy crops. So all of your fruit crops, vegetable crops, they're pretty much all going to be hosts to the southern blight pathogen, but your corn, cereal grains, sorghums, pasture grasses typically are not susceptible to southern blight. So thinking about that, I hope vegetable growers that are watching today are thinking about, oh, what about my cover crops? What about my rotational crops? So all of this is important information, but again, a very wide host range. That's what makes southern blight so hard to manage. Southern blight symptoms, of course, we see them first in the canopy. First thing we'll see is wilting and sudden and permanent wilt. So not just kind of wilting like it's hot and you water it and it pops back up. This is a permanent wilt, but it seems to happen really suddenly. And then after that wilting, the plant will blight, meaning it'll turn brown, it'll die, and it'll just stand there. So all the leaves will remain intact for at least a while anyway, and that plant will remain upright. Again, sudden death. That's what blighting means, sudden death, and that's really what you get with southern blight. So depending on the size of the plant, the symptoms will look a little bit different, but again, it's pretty distinct. Also, symptoms and signs of southern blight are going to be right at that soil level, like I described earlier. So southern blight will cause a canker or a girdling stem lesion right at the soil line. Sometimes this is harder to see if you're using a plastic mulch or a woven cloth, but looking down, so if you have a whole plant that dies, looking down, looking for these mycelial fans, that's that stringy white fungal body. So if it's wet, and even if it's hot outside, whether we're getting persistent summer rains or you've got drip irrigation under that plastic, if it's wet or moist and hot, southern blight is going to be really happy. So those mycelial fans are pretty distinct, and those sclerotia. Sclerotia, those are those little BB looking, tan little round BB looking balls that are sitting there on the ground in this image. So they can line up that girdling stem, and they'll start as white, then they kind of turn cream, then tan, then a dark reddish brown as they mature. And they're pretty distinct, and you'll see those in images throughout this presentation. You've seen them already. So sclerotia, round, perfectly round sclerotia, or a telltale sign, but that mycelial fanning as well. So what is the life cycle of southern blight? First of all, I talked about the host range. It will affect solanaceous crops, cucurbits, brassicas, legumes, alliums, pretty much any of our vegetable crops. And that's, again, that's what makes it so hard to manage, because it will also infect weeds. And a lot of our weed hosts fall in these same plant families, but it will infect most of our weeds as well as most of our vegetable and specialty crops. The life cycle of Agroathelia rolfsii, again, hot, wet weather, 80 to 95 degrees. When you are hot, this pathogen is happy. Again, it likes wet conditions, so whether that is summer rains, we haven't had a lot of those these last few years, but sometimes when it rains, it's pretty persistent, and commercial farmers are almost always drip irrigating, so we put those water to those commercial crops, and if southern blight, if the pathogen is in that soil, it's going to be really happy that time of year. Those sclerotia, remember those little tan and brown balls that we saw? Those sclerotia are overwintering structures. They can survive in the soil for 2 to 6 years, possibly more. So as they turn darker, they're melanizing, and they are resistant to heat and drought and cold and fungicides. So they are really persistent. They generally stay on the top 2 to 3 inches of soil. They start out in debris, and then they just kind of hang around there. They're small enough that they're hard to see when they're mixed with soil, so we carry them around when we're moving soil around. So spread primarily is we bring infected plants into our fields, southern blight appears, but once it's there, those sclerotia will mix in with soil, and again, we move them around through our farm implements, dirty shoes, dirty tools, so it can move around any way that soil particles can move around. So thinking about how you move from field to field, and if you have an infected field, infested field, how would you possibly move that to a clean field? So taking precautions, always though starting managing by doing your work in the clean fields first, and then working in your dirty fields or your infested fields later in the day, and then hitting the hose, cleaning everything, and then getting those workers out of the field, washing their shoes and washing their coveralls. So how do we manage southern blight? I kind of alluded to that a second ago, is we're going to start with cultural practices or production practices. We start by preventing introduction best we can. We're never going to put a mediocre plant in the field or accept a shipment of liners or plugs that are not up to par. Next, we're going to rotate. I told you this pathogen can survive 2 to 6 years. So when we always say a 3-year rotation is standard, if you have southern blight, you may have to rotate for longer than that, or rotate into a non-host, which can be very hard because, again, this host range is very broad. Managing weeds is also important because a lot of our broadleaf weeds fall within the same families that our crops do, so they can also be hosts to the southern blight pathogen. Ideally, fallowing between crops might not work. Your cover crop, again, has to be a non-host, and it really, we always have a cover crop of some sort, right? Or we have some kind of weeds in the field. So if you think you're going to go fallow, make sure you think about what that weed management would be or what cover crop you would use. So we want to stay with monocots or grassy plants, like your cereals would be good cover crops to rotate with. And then deep tilling after harvest and deep tilling before the next crop goes in will help bury those sclerotia. So if you have an epidemic, you might want to think about deep tilling or multiple tillages per season. And if you're a no-till grower and you have southern blight, maybe we can talk about that a little bit more and help you come up with some solutions. All right, so if you have southern blight in your field or on your farm, it's really, again, difficult to manage. So we're going to think about aggressive tactics to manage disease. So not just very lightweight management practices, but we're going to get pretty aggressive. Thinking about blocking first and foremost. So knowing your field blocks, knowing how you work clean field first and then to the dirty one, assuring that you're not moving soil or debris from the dirty field to the non-infested field. Washing equipment between fields. That means your tractor tires, your carts, your tools, your buckets. So any way that you can move soil or dust or dirt or debris, that's what you've got to wash. And I know that takes a long time, but preventing spread is really important when you have southern blight on your farm. So we call all of this washing and cleaning, we call that sanitation. Sanitation is always my favorite word. I love to talk about sanitation, but think about if you've got this infestation, how to keep from moving it from place to place if it's hitchhiking in soil particles. So think about it in that way and it'll all make sense. And then you can prevent and limit the movement of the southern blight pathogen around your own farm. All right. We're going to talk we're going to talk fungicides now, and let's start with high tunnels. High tunnels are considered greenhouses here in Kentucky. So when you're choosing a fungicide, you've got to choose a fungicide that's approved for greenhouse use. Those are limited. I realize that, and that again, that makes southern blight in high tunnels extremely difficult to manage. Other considerations, we always like to talk about fungicides being curative. Fungicides are not curative. At best, they're suppressive. We usually use them as preventatives, but when we use them as suppressants, we're only just slowing them down for a limited amount of time, 14, 21 days. And so using fungicides to suppress southern blight can be very expensive, and it may overcome, it may be higher than the profit that could come out of a field. So conventional products, we do have some good ones out there, but they're not magic bullets. If you're an organic grower, our organic products are preventative at best. We just don't have the arsenal of organic products that we do in conventional. But again, they have limited efficacy and we have to use them as preventatives. I'd rather see everyone, conventional and organic growers, use them as preventatives and not as suppressants. But sometimes it pops up in the middle of the season and we've got to do some spraying just to salvage the crop, at least to get us to the end of the season. I said this a second ago, preventative treatments are ideal. That's what we always want to do. Rescue treatments are expensive, so we're only suppressing, and depending on how much of the pathogen is there and how badly infected and diseased the plants are will depend on whether these rescue treatments can actually get a harvest out of the field. So that's always variable. We can always help you work that out and make some of those decisions. All right, so that was a lot about southern blight. I realize we have a lot of resources on the University of Kentucky Department of Plant Pathology webpage. Click on extension. So our URL is plantpathology.ca.uky.edu. That CA means College of Agriculture, but I'll put that link down in the description. And also we have another site that we call Veggie Scout. So that's a series of scouting guides with full color images, very minimal text, but full color images to help growers look at different diseases that are possible, maybe do some matching, some more investigating before calling their county agent. I'm going to also put the Veggie Scout URL down in the description. Some other very important resources for growers is we do have a fact sheet on our Department of Plant Pathology website called Southern Blight, and it goes through all of these topics that I've been through today. It includes everything from life cycle to overwintering to susceptible crops. It does not, though, include fungicides. You'll find fungicides in the Kentucky Vegetable Production Guide for commercial growers, and that guide is published every 2 years. It's available online as a PDF for free, and county offices generally will order this guide every 2 years when the new ones come out. They may or may not have some at your county office, but definitely we will be publishing another guide in the winter of 2025-2026. So there will be a new guide next spring, 2026, but the PDF is always available on our website. Some other really important resources for our commercial growers or for any grower here in Kentucky are our 120 extension offices, one in each county. So I encourage all of our growers to get to know their county agent. They're highly trained, have a wealth of resources, and they're also your link to our plant disease diagnostic lab, which is a service we offer to our growers here in Kentucky at no charge. So our plant disease diagnostic lab can help us confirm or help you confirm southern blight or any disease in your fields. We are also on social media. Most of our handles are at KY Plant Disease. And on YouTube, you can find me at Nicole Gauthier. Now, all of our resources are available in a one-stop shop, which is in a newsletter article. Kentucky Pest News is the newsletter that I highly recommend you subscribe to, but in this particular article, which you can get to either by scanning the QR code, or I will put that URL down in the description, and it includes everything you need to be a commercial vegetable grower in Kentucky. So that's all of our departmental websites, all of our newsletters, emails, social media handles, it's all there. So I highly encourage all of our commercial growers to find that page and to subscribe to the listservs, the emails, and to check out those web pages. Last but not least, a couple of extra resources that we have. First of all, we're starting to convert a lot of our resources into Spanish. So if you're a native Spanish speaker, if you have friends or fellow farmers who are Spanish speakers, or workers on your farm that are Spanish speakers, you can follow this either this bit.ly URL or scan this QR code, and it'll take you to some of those resources, and we're always adding more. So we have a long list that we're trying to get done. So follow that page. And finally, we have a high tunnel tomato short course that's going on this spring. We started a few episodes, and it's going to go through the spring. That's going to be on YouTube, so you can watch it anytime. But we are going to be dropping new videos throughout the season, just in time for site preparation, planting, transplanting, and we're going to cover additional topics like insect and disease management, and then harvesting and storage. So this is going to go on through the spring and summer 2025, but those videos will be on my YouTube channel, and I will have that link down in the description as well. So check out the descriptions for lots of resources and links to what you need, and I wish you all a productive 2025 season. Thank you.